Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. Manchester United remain unbeaten under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, this time knocking Arsenal out of the FA Cup. How did they do it? Where did Arsenal go wrong? Don't worry, here at the interviews, we've got you covered. So on this edition of the interviews, we're going to break down, or briefly break down, how Manchester United beat Arsenal. So before we get into today's video, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/footy analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. In today's video, we're going to break down the first half, see how United set up and why they were able to expose Arsenal's shape, and then move to the second half and see why Arsenal were unable to get back into the game and why United were so devastating on the counterattack but lacking that final touch. But first, let's get to the starting lineups. We look at Manchester United. Somewhat of a surprise here because it did look like it was a midfield diamond again, like they had against Spurs. Lukaku and Alexis Sanchez out in more wider forward positions with Lingard just in behind them. And in midfield, they went with Matic, Herrera, and Pogba. Arsenal moved to a 4-2-3-1. They had Lacazette ahead of Ramsey, Aubameyang and Iwobi out in the wider areas, and in midfield, Tyrrell and Xhaka. So now let's get to the first half, see how United approached the game and why Arsenal went into halftime trailing 2-1. So when we look at Manchester United against Arsenal, the first thing we have to look at is United's shape. It was similar to the way they played against Spurs, and that made sense because of the way that Arsenal were also looking to approach the game. They're missing Bellerin, they're missing Monreal, they're natural fullbacks in these positions. When they've had them this season, they've really worked well in wider areas, looking to play cutbacks, and that's been some of Arsenal's best football. Here, with Kolasinac, who's not a natural fullback, and you have Maitland-Niles, you're kind of lacking a bit, and you could see in the opening stages what Arsenal were trying to do, or what United were trying to do, because you have Lukaku playing in a wider role, you have Alexis playing in a wider role as well, and they were looking to make those runs in between the fullbacks and the center backs when United were able to pick up the ball and break forward. That made sense because Kolasinac was constantly trying to push forward, and that left space for Lukaku to now run at his marker, and that just makes sense because Lukaku, as much as he's been renowned for being a center forward that's able to play with his back to goal, this just seems to be like his best position. We've seen some of his best performances for Everton, for Belgium in this role here, running at defenders in transition, and we saw that again on the night. But when we think about everything else as a whole, they weren't really pressing high. Lukaku and Alexis were ensuring that passes weren't being played into the fullbacks. You had Lingard, who was kind of tucking in between Xhaka and Tyrrell. And here United had the option where if they wanted to push Herrera to Xhaka, they could. If they wanted to push Pogba to Tyrrell, they could also do that. And if balls got switched up to the wide areas, we saw Pogba dispossess Maitland-Niles on a few occasions, and Herrera played a key role as well because Arsenal's main attacking threat, we saw Xhaka be able to pick up the ball and constantly play diagonals, more so to the left than to the right, but he also played them to the right. But most of Arsenal's attacks stemmed down the left side. They tried to get Kolasinac and Iwobi to combine, but Herrera did a good job of protecting Ashley Young, and they rarely had any key moments there. Yes, the goal did stem there. We'll get to that in a bit. But they had a warning sign in the opening stages where Iwobi was running at both of the defenders, and he played the overlapping ball to Kolasinac, and Young tracked it well. But we did have we had Aubameyang running towards Lindelof, and Lindelof was able to push him off, and he couldn't get a shot off. But again, we're seeing what they were trying to do there. We saw a ball shifted out to Iwobi to the right, or to the right of Bailly in left half space because Young was preoccupied with Kolasinac pushing forward, and he was able to fire a tame effort at Romero. But besides that, that is what Arsenal were trying to do. But Herrera was often there, ensuring that it was 2v2, and Arsenal never really created chances down that left-hand side. Besides that, United did have a good shape without the ball. Their back four was intact. The midfield three dropped off deep as well. So there was no real space between the lines. And it didn't really matter because they didn't have this is a game where you could say that they really could have used Mesut Ozil from a creative aspect. Yes, you could talk about his defensive liabilities. But when you think about it, you have Lacazette playing up front. So depending on whichever side he floated to, one center back would take him off. Ramsey was often floating around, but he was often looking to get forward too. So that would leave Lindelof with him. And because United shape was so good, they were willing to take those 1v1 battles, knowing that Lindelof and Bailly would probably take their chances and win in aerial duels or in 1v1 crosses going into the box. Aubameyang never really got service out in those wide areas until later on in the half. And like I said, everything was coming down that left-hand side. But when you think about it and you see all those players pushed up forward, and you still only have Lukaku and you have Alexis Sanchez breaking into the space, that is a big worry sign for Arsenal, because that is where United were able to really pounce. Yeah, we saw in the earlier stages Pogba and Alexis combined to split Tyrrell and Maitland-Niles, and Pogba nearly rounded Peter Cech. But when you think about some of their better chances, if you even look to the opening goal, it's just, and this stems all after Mustafi entered the game for Socrates, and that kind of shifted things, because when you think about it, back fours, it's about consistency, it's about understanding each other and knowing when to push lines or not. That wasn't the case here. Mustafi came on, and we're not going to blame it all on him. When you look to the opening goal, that's just a simple ball from Herrera square to Lukaku, and Lukaku has at the edge of the box. You have Tyrrell stepping to him, but then Koscielny steps as well. And when Koscielny steps to him, he's able to play a reverse pass around Tyrrell, and you have Alexis making the run between the center backs, and he's able to round check and place his effort into the corner from a very tight angle. But the second goal kind of summed up what United were all about, because it's Luke Shaw winning it from his half, and he's able to run straight through midfield. No one steps to him, and what happens here is Kolasinac is still pretty high, and because Koscielny tries to step a bit high too late, what happens is that Shaw's able to play the pass between Koscielny and Kolasinac for Lukaku to break forward, and now you have a 3v2. You have a 3v2 with Alexis breaking and Lingard breaking, and Lukaku's charging forward. He's able to pull it back to Lingard, and Lingard places his effort in superbly. That wasn't the final chance that they got from the break. We had Matic clearing the ball into Alexis Sanchez, who's able to get away from Mustafi, flick the ball over Tyrrell, and again slide it out to Lukaku free, and he's able to run at Kolasinac, and Pogba makes a run, but Lukaku's reverse ball is a bit too heavy. But that is how United were able to really find joy. Arsenal were kind of pushing their line forward a bit too high. Koscielny was stepping forward, but that is what they wanted. They wanted Lukaku to take advantage of the space when Kolasinac pushed forward. They wanted Alexis to dart into that half space, and with Jesse Lingard, who's able to pop up into spaces, receive the ball, link play, drift out into the wider areas, and he was a key cog. And when they needed him to defend, he would drop back and help out the midfield bank of three. Arsenal, on the other hand, were able to get a goal to ensure that the lead was cut down to 1 prior to halftime. Ball shifted out to Kolasinac from Xhaka. He's able to play it to Iwobi, who cuts in now. So Iwobi cuts in. Like I said, Arsenal have their markers. He cuts in, and we see Ramsey drift out to that channel. And Bailly usually goes with him, but this time he doesn't, and he retreats a bit. And Iwobi plays it back to Ramsey, who's able to drift past Herrera, run out Bailly into left half space, and his cross into the box does miss. Lindelof doesn't get to it. You see Lacazette and Tyrrell charge into the box, and Lacazette's touch on the ball is able to slide it into Aubameyang, who taps it into an open net. Later on, just before halftime, they switch it out to the right, and we see Aubameyang from a deeper position play it to Maitland-Niles, and Shaw steps to him, but Aubameyang continues his run. Matic shifts over, and when Matic shifts over as Maitland-Niles pushes forward, Aubameyang is able to get the ball in the space that Matic should be in. So when he does get into that space and Shaw does recover, what we end up seeing is that Ramsey darts into the space between Lindelof and Shaw to get the ball. As he does that, Shaw comes to him, and Maitland-Niles continues his run where Pogba should be tracking, and Ramsey plays the ball around Shaw, and Pogba tracks, but his slide tackle is poor, and then we see Maitland-Niles be able to push forward and pull it back for Lacazette, but his effort was tame at the keeper. When you break down the first half as a whole, United had a clear plan. They were able to sit off a bit deeper, compress the space between the lines, because Arsenal didn't have a central player able to find the ball in those areas and play penetrative passes, and there was no link-up play between Aubameyang, who was isolated on the right, and Lacazette. They tried to play everything to the left, but United were prepared for that with Herrera shifting over. And with Kolasinac pushing up into higher areas, what happened was that now there was space for Lukaku and Sanchez to break into in transition. And with Mustafi coming on for Koscielny, the back four wasn't as stable as it was in the previous game and the start of this game. So now let's get to the second half, see what Arsenal tried to do to get back into the game and why they were unable to knock Manchester United out of the FA Cup. The odd thing about Arsenal's approach in the second half was that they felt the need to really push men on forward in the opening stages when they really could have just settled into the game, possibly gain control, and eventually try to break United down. But they were pushing men forward. It was very open in the opening 50 minutes. But they did have one of the better chances in the earlier stages when Tyrrell shifted a nice diagonal out to Aubameyang. So Aubameyang now is able to go 1v1 with Shaw, and you have Maitland-Niles breaking forward, which forces Pogba to track him. But the cross that he tries to play into Maitland-Niles to push the ball into him hits off him, but he's able to recover it, and you have Ramsey breaking in between the center backs and ahead of Matic, and when Maitland-Niles recovers it, he's able to clip the ball into Ramsey, who is now free ahead of Matic, and he nods his effort on goal, but Romero pushes it over. Besides that, Arsenal really struggled to create chances in this half, and they were often susceptible to the counterattack. The reason why they were susceptible to the counterattack is that they were pushing so many men forward, and it was very easy for United. The problem with United was just that on several counterattacking opportunities, they just lacked the final ball. They were just missing that final piece of quality to put their player in. We look at Koscielny being booked. That's a great opportunity where you see Lukaku dragging out Koscielny to win the ball. And what does he do? He ends up flicking it over him for Pogba, who was running with Tyrrell, but Tyrrell doesn't track him. And now Pogba's able to break forward on goal at the back line, but Koscielny tracks him and eventually pushes him down. Shortly after that, we do see Alexis get the ball, dropping off, pulling out Maitland-Niles, and instantly flicking it into Pogba again. And Pogba now is able to run at Tyrrell. When he runs at Tyrrell, he tries to play a reverse pass into Lukaku, but it's overhit. You see these chances. United are breaking forward. Lukaku, Lingard, Alexis Sanchez, Pogba, all getting opportunities to push forward, but just missing that final ball, and that was the issue United had going forward in the second half. Eventually, Arsenal made some changes. They ended up bringing on Mesut Ozil. After that, they brought on Guendouzi, and because they brought on Guendouzi because Koscielny got hurt, and when you bring him on, that means you have to push Xhaka out to center back. And with that being said, Xhaka now moves to center back. You have Guendouzi in midfield, and Arsenal moved to more of a 4-2-2-2. They had Lacazette and Aubameyang playing in a central role. They had right now Ozil and Ramsey operating from central positions, and what they ended up doing was that they pushed the fullbacks forward. So now Arsenal were essentially defending with 4 players, and what we ended up seeing was that United moved more to a 4-3-3. Lukaku moved central, Alexis to the right. They had Alexis to the left, Lingard to the right, and now they were able to drop off into a 4-5-1 to ensure that they had more bodies in narrow central positions, to ensure that Ozil and Ramsey were unable to really get going from those central areas. Ramsey looking to dart in, Ozil looking to find that final pass. So with that being said, there was still now space for them to push forward, because what happens here now is you have the 2 players, center backs, occupying the center forwards. If you want to push the fullback into the fullbacks, you can have the narrow 5 kind of sit there and help out with the defensive duties in the wider areas. But once United win the ball, able to spring forward, and that is key. Arsenal really only had 1 golden chance from this switch. That was when Kolasinac played a ball into the box that Bailly skied over. And what happens is that this was following the change where Martial and Rashford did come on. It was logical changes. Rashford took off Lukaku. Martial came on for Alexis. What you end up seeing here is Bailly clips the ball up, nods it in the air for Martial. Maitland-Niles attacks it. And when he attacks it, what happens there is that Lacazette is able to poke his foot on it, gain a yard on Luke Shaw, and fire a shot on goal that Romero pushed away. But eventually, as United continued to break on the counterattack, as they soaked up pressure in their deeper roles, what happened now is that they finally got the goal. A poor Lacazette pass to Ozil. Pogba was able to run through Guendouzi and Tyrrell. None of the center backs want to step to him as they drop off, so he's able to fire a shot on goal that Cech pushes aside, but Martial is able to step in and fire a shot past the keeper. But when you break down the game as a whole, United's shape made sense. They were able to have the wider players break out into the channels. They were defensively organized, and Arsenal didn't really have much guile or penetration from central areas. A lot of their attacks stemmed on the left-hand side in the first half, but United coped with that issue well. Yes, they did concede a goal eventually, but in the second half, Arsenal's approach was a bit shaky because they didn't have to push so many men forward in the opening stages, but they left themselves susceptible to counterattacks. And if it wasn't for United's poor final ball, they possibly could have lost this game by more. Eventually, you see them try to chase the game and bring on Ozil, but Soljskaer reacted well, moved to a 4-3-3, brought on more pace, and they were able to finish off the game and knock Arsenal out of the FA Cup while they remained perfect under Soljskaer. But let me know what you guys think. Could United win the FA Cup? And what about Arsenal? A bit inconsistent. They're not winning games as often as they should. What does it say about Unai Emery? Will this squad have a successful season? Will they finish in the top 4? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.